Well met, Wanderer. Some familiar faces returning, others I am seeing here for their first time. All are welcome here. Have a drink, settle in for another tale. I have been asked to share a different story this time, so we will return to the hapless trio, perhaps next time. This tale comes from one of my many misadventures in Adventurers League. For those of you who don't know what that is, you're probably not alone. Adventurers League, or AL, is publicly run D&D games usually found at your local gaming shop. But other venues have been known to run it as well. Having been a DM and a player for AL, I can say with certainty that it's been a totally different experience. As I've mentioned previously, AL is absolutely worth trying, but I will leave any further elaboration on AL or its rules for another time. This particular story is about my very first time attending an AL D&D event. My oh my, what a disaster it was from the start. But I am getting ahead of myself here. 20 minutes into this little event, we encountered our first obstacle. And by we, I mean the table I joined to create a group of lower level or tier 1 players. Our problem was one that apparently happened quite commonly at AL D&D events. We were missing our DM. A first mission that should have banded us together was instead tearing us apart. As each of the other players set out to look for another table, when the group was just about to fall apart, one of the so-called players revealed himself to be a semi-regular DM at the shop for these kind of events. He decided to run a session for us before the group tore itself apart completely. Instantly, another issue presented itself. He had nothing prepared. I handed him my copy of Curse of Strahd. Yes, you heard me correctly. Ravenloft setting. A place so many of us feared in the older editions. The adventure decided upon for us was the Death House. What could be ominous about that? Absolutely nothing could go wrong here. What was I thinking? Our DM started to thumb quickly through the pages of the book, getting a feel for the sequence of events, having never run it before. Most of us had our characters prepared and ready to go beforehand, so we were discussing our tactics, or in this case, lack thereof. Our group was made up of a Turtle Monk, a Drow Elf Rogue, High Elf Cleric, and 2 Half-Elves, a Sorcerer and a Ranger. I was the Ranger, the safe option I thought. It would help the group and provide me with survivability. The Turtle was designated as the primary meat shield, and myself the backup. A great plan for a ranged character, right? I would have preferred to sacrifice the Rogue, but I had more health. Things were not looking good for us already, but we decided we were ready. Our adventure would begin like so many others in a tavern, with a mysterious figure wanting to hire us for a job. Eager to get things started, we agreed to a job that would send us to investigate a death house, or what the book called Barovia, a small town in the middle of nowhere. We left that tavern and our contact with the intent of becoming heroes. We were heading towards what should have been a shortcut through the extra spooky woods nearby. Dense fog, wolves howling in the distance, creepy gnarled trees, the works, sparing no expense to unnerve us. As luck would have it, soon enough we came upon a body. A very dead body covered in claw and teeth marks. Upon further inspection, we noticed some of the wolf tracks surrounding said body and a trail leading away. Yeah, those wolf howls that were once so distant were quickly drawing nearer to us, and our decision to leave a little too late. Surrounding our group was a pack of really big doggies, otherwise known as direwolves. And what we didn't realize before engaging them in combat is they were sent as our very own aggressive and violent tour guides. Their sole purpose was to ensure that we made it to Barovia. Unfortunately, we didn't know this, which resulted in me becoming a chew toy, in the most literal sense for them. I didn't die there. Oh, no. Then I would have missed out on all the fun that came after. From even more embarrassing circumstances. So, the rest of the group who left me behind previously, while trying to escape on their own, were then forced to recover my limp body before we could continue on our adventure. Shortly after getting to our destination, the wolves left us alone, vanishing just as quickly into the mists from whence they came. I, however, was given only enough rest to get back on my feet before we decided to start exploring the village. We found nothing too out of the ordinary that night while exploring the area. Just some empty streets and 2 random children outside of some creepy house. They asked us for help, so of course, we said yeah, we'll help. Turtle and I stayed with the kids outside, while the rest of the group went inside to take a peek. My reason for staying behind was 1 part paranoia and another part being majorly hurt. Inside, they found very little during their initial look, so instead of returning to get us, like the sensible thing, they continued further into the house. That's when things started going wrong. Most noticeably, the kids disappeared. Not run off, not kidnapped, they just freaking vanished into thin air before our eyes. They were either capable magic users or ghosts. In Ravenloft, it's usually the latter. So, we did the only reasonable thing to do in that situation. We grabbed a nail and waited patiently for the screams. Not really. This story wouldn't be so memorable if we had done that. We actually decided to join the group inside, but not before trying to secure an exit for ourselves after learning the door was closing itself when the turtle entered. Thinking I was being smart, I wedged a nearby rock in the door, and that failed miserably. The house, it broke the rock. Yes, you heard me. I said the house broke the rock, easily with a resounding crack. After realizing we were now locked inside with no way out, we figured it would be best to join up with the rest of the group quickly. Luckily, everyone was still on the first floor of the house, which made finding them very easy. Apparently, the kitchen was proving a challenge, though. The rogue had decided the dumb waiter would be fun and tried to fit themselves inside for a ride. After prying her out of the clutches of this makeshift elevator, we continued searching the first floor. It wasn't long before the rogue wandered off alone and decided to head up to the second story without telling anyone. The clanging sounds of metal from above was our first clue as to where she had disappeared to. I was the first to make my way upstairs to assist the rogue, followed by the cleric, who kept my butt healed. Literally. In a messy way, the rogue and I were able to defeat the animated armor she had disturbed. Her only word of thanks to the rest of us were, "See, I had it taken care of." We grumbled and continued onward. Most of us continued on to the study where we found some things of particular interest. However, as you've probably guessed by now, the rogue had not. No, she wandered off on her own again. This time, it was her blood-curdling scream that got our attention and moving to find her. Only she wasn't alone. She had somehow managed to find a very angry-looking female spirit. Upon our arrival, the rogue ran past us, leaving us with this new mess to clean up. Myself and the turtle were now the target. As we discovered, once angered, ghosts really don't care who the target is. I ended up the lucky winner of her attention. The angered ghost came barreling at me after I hit it with my arrow. The DM rolled its attack. "Unnatural 20! His next words attempted to console me. "Don't worry, you get a saving throw, and it's not a very high DC. But you know what? Not very high seems near impossible when you roll a natural 1, and already injured from previous encounters. Needless to say, I died. The DM stared at me in disbelief as I couldn't help breaking into laughter. Our turtle? Yeah, he finished the ghost with a single strike after this, but DM decided it was a good place to end things. Can't say I blame him. Although, afterwards, the DM started apologizing while I laughed at the absurdity of the events that took place. I later learned that apparently dying on your first time at AL is a bad thing, or at least an unlucky rarity. It was truly memorable for me, though. I ran into that DM again, since he stopped coming to AL after that. Others said life was getting in the way, but I couldn't help but wonder if the guilt over my death that session played a part. This is how my first session of AL ended, but it did not discourage me from returning the following week. As a side note, I did return to Ravenloft in other sessions of AL, but none of them were quite as memorable. With that, my story is concluded. If you enjoyed this, please make sure to give it a like and my channel a subscribe. Any requests, suggestions, or comments? Leave those below. Till next time, make sure to mind your P's and Q's.